And
be
let's not forget Australia, who's pushing a lot of that anxiousness.
Yeah, Australia is it's that's just insane because
Yeah.
Australia's largest customer is China.
Hmm.
In 2008 financial crisis, when a lot of the world is in pain, what pulled Australia out of that recession is a demand from China for the
Yep.
Australian resources, for the
Hmm.
Australian coal, natural gas,
Yep.
uh, but Australian is throwing that like, no, we gotta be a loyal, obedient poodle to the United States.
Well, and I would add, honestly, this is just my own personal analysis. I don't have anything to concretely back this up, but this is just what I think. I think what it is the Western hegemony, especially the European types, cannot deal with seeing a, let's say,
Non-white,
a non-white,
non-white.
nation start to balance themselves and be equal, or
Yes.
even rise above them economically. And I
Yep.
think that's what's pushing a lot of this. And let's just call it for what it is. I see it as a form of white supremacy
Yeah, it is.
on a
It is.
nationalistic level. Um, I guess because here, I guess this question kind of ties in. So I guess hold that thought on that one. I want to hear your thoughts on that. And then Thomas also said, what does Carl think of the Asian Pacific Trade Agreement involving many Asian countries, some Pacific Island nations, and Australia? Is it working? Will the deal surpass the West in buying power? That's the reason why I wanted to tie it together, because it fit with what we're already
Yeah.
talking about. So yeah,
Okay.
there you go, brother.
So I'm actually maybe time to talk about TPP, right? Like that's one
Yes.
Obama's baby. Obama's baby is pushing the Trans-Pacific Partnership, and if you look at the Trans-Pacific Partnership, it includes all the economies around the Pacific Rim, with a major exception. It
Mm-hmm.
excludes China because TPP was designed against China. The idea
Yes.
is U.S. is gonna lead because U.S. realized the economic weight of the world is now shifting from the West to the
Mm-hmm.
Asia Pacific region.
Yep.
U.S. wants to remain part of that, but U.S. don't want China to come in and dominate because China would if China is included. So that's why they have TPP
And push them out.
exactly, specifically. But then, thanks to Trump,
Mm-hmm.
Trump killed that deal. But right now, China is pushing ahead with its own economic cooperations, which had basically the same numbers of countries that sign up with the TPP, but minus
Mm-hmm.
United States. but the thing is, United States cannot hope to compete with China economically in this
Nope.
region. I'm living in Bali right now. I'm in Indonesia,
Which is
right?
beautiful, by the way. I've been
Yes, it's gorgeous.
Bali's
The
so
island of
beautiful.
gods. It's I highly recommend visit if everybody have a chance.
I don't know. That
But
flight is just too long for me, but it is beautiful.
it's only 14 hours. Just to read,
Oh,
just sleep, just sleep, sleep
I
on the
say
plane.
that the
Um,
last long trip I did like
or you
that
can
was like
do
20
like
years
island
ago.
hop. You can do like island. You can do
True,
the
could go to Hawaii and then jump from Hawaii to Japan,
yeah,
and then yeah,
just like the World War II. You can do your island hop campaign across the
through
Pacific.
Midway.
and the reason the pivot to Asia, which was pioneered by Hillary Clinton under in the first Obama administration, the whole pivot to Asia is all military. There's no economic sphere because U.S. know it could not compete economically with China in Southeast Asia. I'm on the ground here in Bali. Like right now, one thing China has done is it was able to make a lot of the global South countries afford cheap smartphones, right? Like that that Chinese manufacturing did that. Like in here, the phone brands are dominated by of course Samsung, but other than Samsung, it's all Chinese brand.
Yeah.
Vivo. Before it was Huawei, but Huawei got killed by the U.S. sanctions. So it was Vivo, Oppo, and all the other Chinese brands. and U.S. doesn't factor. I mean, sure, U.S. has the extraction companies, the Freeport Moran.
Mhm.
They're still digging up gold in Papua, another
Mhm.
conflict region in Indonesia. So that's the extent of U.S. involvement. But in other economic sphere, U.S. cannot compete. This is Southeast Asia is already drawing closer and closer economically
Yeah.
to
Yeah,
China.
that's what
Yeah.
Thomas put here. He says U.S. doesn't want China to dominate. LOL, that's funny. That's
Yeah.
what's going on, and what I would like people to understand. Don't look at this as this person's good or this person's bad or any of that. What it is you need to look at it from the Monroe Doctrine point of view. The U.S. was about, we're trying to capitalize on this, and we want everybody under our umbrella. And then you had Russia on the other side that was more of a, even though they call themselves a whatever government they want to call themselves, they're more of a mixed economy, which would be more closer to democratic socialism versus laissez-faire capitalism. And you had the world being separated like Risk, everybody having to pick a side. Now China's to the point where China is able to chart their own, and now you're starting to see other nations that are starting to rise up and not have to pick one, well, per se, pick one side or the other, which
The
has
thing,
more options.
the thing is, it's the U.S. that's pushing people to pick sides, right? Like China
Yes.
is perfectly fine to work in this globalized world. Like even people in Southeast Asia, right? They very much want to keep their trade with China, and they're fine with the U.S. coming in, doing their military thing, whatever. But what they don't want is to be forced to pick a side, between U.S. and China. But right now, it's not China pushing them to pick a side. It's a U.S. going, you're either with us or against us.
Well, that's what I try to point to, and people, they'll go into what China's doing and what Russia's doing. Every nation is doing something that we all can have questions about, and we all be like, "Hey, that's messed up. That's not right." But the overall overarching theme, which I keep seeing and keep coming back to, is it's the U.S. trying to impose their will on the big countries and the small countries as a whole,
Everyone.
and they're trying to force this hegemony of control, whether economically, through sanctions, through military, through whichever way. It's basically like what they used to say back in the day, but by hook or by crook. They're trying to control the whole game, and more people are starting to say, we don't want to be under your control anymore.
Yep.
And I know you said this in the interview with Jamaro. You said that you don't think it will get to a point where it can get and turn into a military situation. But because I believe the U.S. just in their spirit could not fathom not being in control, it could lead that direction because, and what we're talking about, cause and reaction.
In a rational world, this should not lead into a hot war because China, U.S. both nuclear powers, and right now any kind of hot war, shooting war, it can very quickly escalate into a nuclear exchange. I don't see a path of de-escalation. I only see
I don't either.
path of escalation. So that's why you got a rational world. Everyone is assuming everyone is rational. This nuclear war just would not happen. But you and I both know the U.S. leadership is so crazy. We don't know what they will do. Sometimes.
Did you hear Zelensky talking about we can use small nukes and trying to prepare people for a small nuclear attack?
The U.S. military has been talking about that, using tactical nuclear weapons in a potential war with China over Taiwan, right? Like it's like, it's only a tactical nuclear weapon. We only wipe out a small city. You shouldn't be too upset about it.
Yeah,
right? This is crazy talk. It's like how do you climb down from that? Once the nuclear weapon is used, how do you climb down?
You cannot climb down.
Yeah, from it's Armageddon. We're gonna all live in a Mad Max world afterwards.
Yeah, and I tell people from my experience. Granted, I didn't deal with nukes, but I dealt with, when I was in the military, I dealt with everything from say 9mm all the way up to Tomahawk cruise missiles. I understood the capabilities of a lot of countries. And one thing I've followed since I've been out of the military is the capabilities, weapons capabilities of other nations around us. And so what people don't realize, especially with this Russia-Ukraine thing, if they keep pushing this proxy war and it keeps evolving, like I know you've heard about Finland and Sweden, starting to amp up and wanting to join NATO, and heard about Germany, which are starting to arm up more and more of these nations building up their militaries. It's looked like it's pushing towards that. Now, is it the military industrial complex in America just pushing this to sell weapons? Possibly, but just because they're pushing it to sell weapons doesn't mean it can't develop into much worse of a situation. And even those people who think, well, if we just take out Russia, that's kind of crazy. Russia has alliances and partnerships with China, with India, with Iran, with North Korea, with so many other nations. And so, I mean, what's some of your thoughts on all of that? Because I see, and then, I forgot. And let's not forget Russia's newest technology. I mean, not Russia, but China's newest technology with the supersonic missile, hypersonic missile, which our generals have even said our defense systems could not pick this up. So if this was launched,
Russia actually unveiled their own versions in the Ukraine war. They also have hypersonic weapons that the U.S. doesn't have.
Well, another thing which I like to add on to, which people don't think about, is they also have advanced EMP weapons. So say, for instance, if they say one missile flies out from one of those nations, the EMP goes off, that means the United States cannot fire back unless it's from one of the carriers. But we would not be able to launch back from the United States at all.
Yeah, I mean that's why. So I want to go back to the Australia angle because
I know I threw a whole lot at you. I want you to just take it all and run with it.
Because you're right. The surface ships may not be that useful in a big conventional battle between great powers. U.S. can send carrier groups to bomb Iraq, to bomb Libya, because there's no payback. There's no payback.
They have no navy.
But if you go against China and Russia, those are people. They can fight back, and a lot of people are making a big deal about the.
So Russian can Iran.
A lot of people are making a big deal about the Russian Black Fleet flagship Moskva being sunk, possibly by anti-ship missile. That actually just shows how vulnerable a surface ship is to missiles. And China has plenty of missiles. China has been mass producing missiles in anticipation of US 7th fleet sailing into Taiwan Strait in events of war. And there's nothing US can do about that. That is why people talk about, these ships have anti-missile defenses. No. When you have whole shit tons of missiles, you will easily overwhelm your anti-missile system, because you need missiles to shoot down missiles. When they have more missiles than you can pack on a ship, they will sink you no matter what. So
Reagan showed with the Star Wars plan how hard that is, even to get that in. All the money that was dumped into that, they never were able to get that to work anyway. So the whole Star Wars shooting down a missile with a missile thing is dodgy at best as a defense.
Yes, so a lot of the submarine became more important, especially nuclear submarines, which can last longer underseas, and which I want to loop back to Australia, because Australia formed this AUKUS Alliance to purchase nuclear submarines from the United States, the whole, it goes back to that white supremacy thing. Like Australia, they're a white settler colony in Asia, right? They're physically, geographically tied to Asia, but
have no business being there.
But they are deathly afraid of being overwhelmed by the Asians surrounding them.
Doesn't that sound like Israel?
Yes.
And South Africa.
Yes, there's because they have like 200-300 million Indonesians just to the north of them. I Bali, I'm pretty close to Australia. They're always being afraid by swarmed over by the yellow horde, right? So they have this kind of psychological thing that ties them. They must stick with the Anglo Alliance and must stick with the US and UK no matter what. That's where the AUKUS Alliance come from, right? Even though their biggest trade partner is China, economically it makes sense to keep this trade relationship, to keep it friendly. But no, they gotta protect their Europeanness.
Yes,
in Australia.
That's what I think this boils down to. Hey, I'm sorry. Audience. This is what I honestly think this boils down to.
Yeah, I mean, it is. It's. I mean, like I was just bummed out that they have to kick out France from the alliance because originally it was France that was tipped to supply them with the submarines. They ditched France to go with US. Otherwise the alliance name would have been "fuck us" instead of.
And you know what? European nations are that like they would have kicked them out just for that reason alone. I could see it.
Yeah. I mean that right now, so Australia is pursuing this totally irrational policy of talking about sending nuclear submarines into South China Sea. It's like, what the hell are you doing in South China Sea? South China Sea is where the Australian ores get shipped to China. That's your shipping lane from Australia to China. You're going to go sink the Chinese ship carrying the Australian resources to China? I mean, you're crazy.
You sound like you're playing a game of suicide.
Yes.
Where I mean, it's almost like you're trying to be the self-sacrifice to start World War III. That's what it sounds like to me. Because if people who don't get it, and I'm pretty sure most of us should, China to Russia is like, it's like Mike Tyson fighting a high school kid. It's not even close to a fair match.
Yeah.
But for some reason, they want this fight.
Yeah. It's because they felt like, oh, we got to stick with US. We got to stick. But US have no compunction of launching a nuclear strike against China from Australian soil, because then it's Australia.
Then it's Australia's fault. Yeah.
It's Australia going to get you. But US military right now, they have full control over the Pine a base in Australia. They have full operational control in the case of war, and they do have missiles there that they could launch against China. So people, in Australia really need to think about what this means. Would you like to play the Ukraine?
Because you were basically putting yourself in that position,
in the harm's way. Yeah, you are playing a willing proxy in this proxy battle, and it's not going to end well for you. And US is perfectly willing to sacrifice you, because you guess what? You may be white, but you're not US mainland.
Yeah, you're not US mainland, and they know, well, we can sacrifice them. They're not our responsibility. I mean, I look at it as it's the same thing with what the US is doing to Ukraine right now.
Exactly.
It's the same thing with what's going on with Yemen. And that whole back and forth situation is like, well, we don't really care about this because Israel's our buddy. But if it got to a point where all of these neighbors start ganging up and started to actually invade into Israel, is the U.S. going to send ground troops? No, they're not. I don't believe they would. I believe even if they did, it would be too late if it got to the point where, say, Iran literally put ground troops into Israel. It will be over at that point.
Yeah, that might touch off a World War II, because Israel has
I think right now what we really have going on the world stage is literally tripwires all over the place. If this happens, World War III. If that happens, World War III. If this happens, World War III. And so it's like, okay, find your way to navigate through this without starting World War
tripwire
III.
is a U.S. policy. You know, the reason U.S. put its troops in South Korea, it's very clear they're not there to stop any kind of North Korean advance towards Seoul. They act as a tripwire, because if the U.S. servicemen somehow come into danger, that gives excuse for U.S. to declare war. And same thing with U.S. facing Okinawa. You know, if somehow U.S. Okinawa base is gonna get hit by Chinese missiles, that's an excuse for
now you have an international incident, and you have a cause to
watch. Yeah, even all the life of all the U.S. Marines in Okinawa or in U.S. Army
or
servicemen in South Korea, they're sacrifices. They're sacrificial lambs. You know, they're the first. You know, they're in the first. You know,
the first sacrificial lamb. And people don't realize militaries do it all the time, and they've done it since the beginning of time. Saying, "Hey, well, we need that brook over there, but in order for us to take that brook, we need to send this battalion that way to split the flanks." Now, and then they say, well, what's going to happen to that group over there? Oh, they're getting obliterated. But we split their forces to get that bridge that we need, and it's messed up. But when you literally study it, in the military, how they look at like strategy when it gets all the way up to like the generals and admiral level. They literally will just sacrifice whole fleets, hundreds and thousands of people, to forward a deeper military objective.
And that's where we're right now. Like at this point, you know what? If you look at U.S., what's U.S. producing domestically? You know, we just accept weapons, debts, paper money. We print money. We make weapon platforms, right? Okay, the vice
even the oil that's produced, it is being shipped out of the country, and it's not considered as an actual export, because a lot of it goes into the Gulf.
U.S. was so excited to export liquefied natural gas to Europe after the Ukraine wars. Biden openly said, "Oh, we stand ready to supply you with gas," and you know, even though in reality, you know, it's even the amount of LNG that can ship from North America would not even come close to the volume of Russian gas currently going to Europe right now. But U.S. doesn't care, because that's just more profit, more icing on the cake for the U.S. Oil and gas companies.
Well, that's the reason. That's the reason why it's a possibility that Ukraine being sacrificed with Nord Stream 1 and 2 pipelines being down, that would limit Russia's ability to send out natural gases. And so you would have to depend back on the more expensive natural gases coming out of the U.S. and look at them as more of a primary supplier to Europe. And I honestly think that could be a big part of why they're pushing for this, because most of Europe gets most of their crude and their natural gases from Russia.
Yeah, but But that would not save Europe from its immediate needs, because
definitely
to build up the kind of the LNG infrastructure, that would take like 10 to 15 years. But in the meantime, they still have winters. You know, they still have 10 15 winters to live through.
Well, they can't survive on like, we'll just leave a third of the population just without natural gas and heat and stuff like that during the winters. And I think that's why they're kind of doing some of this stuff right now. They're thinking in their diabolical thinking that we can just inch it along, snag Russia. Like I've heard some people say, well, if we can kind of drag Russia into a form of a quagmire, kind of like Vietnam was for America, it can weaken.
They said that openly. They said they want Ukraine to be Russia's Afghanistan. This is on record. U.S. officials said that.
So I'm like, this is, and because they're trying to do that, and they're thinking, well, At the same time, we can weaken Russia. We can try to capitalize and build up our natural gas infrastructure, export to Europe, and at the same time, we can start breaking down Russia as a nation itself, and then leave them weaker for the pickings. Not thinking about you are literally basically going for Russia's throat, but trying to act like you're not really doing it, and
Oh
thinking
yeah,
that there's no possibility that there's going to be an escalation or retaliatory, event or effect from it.
yeah. I mean, they're already waging a full spectrum economic war on Russia right now with all the sanctions. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
they're seizing the Russian central bank assets. Like this is literal banditry. It's like, oh, it's your money. Well, I'm not gonna give it to you.
Yeah.
You earn all this money from selling gas to Europe. Well, guess what? You got to still supply gas to Europe, but we're not gonna pay you. That's
Well,
what they're saying.
and that makes me the next question I want to ask you. What do you think, since they've been doing that and we've been seeing that, Saudi Arabia and Saudi Arabia and the UAE, they're going to start looking at possibly taking, other denominations of currency, or
Yes.
cross
Trade.
conversions with the yuan and things
Yep.
like that. And I was like wondering, the yuan, next it's going to be rubles, and I'm wondering how much of a threat do you think the U.S. petrodollar is in at starting to actually, the beginning of the collapse of the
I
petrodollar?
I want to put in a caveat because Saudi Arabia may have made that announcement as a negotiation tactic with United States, because
Mm-hmm.
they're saying, you know what, we can always go with China. Like you are not
Mm-hmm.
the only option here, U.S.
Yeah,
Because
you're not
right
the
now
only game in town.
yeah, because we know the ruler in Saudi Arabia, MBS, right now have a very strained tie with Washington.
Mhm.
After Khashoggi got
Oh,
chopped up,
definitely.
right?
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and so they're saying, hey, look, you still need us. You still need us for the dollar
Even
hegemony.
MBZ, it's not that great with him in the UAE.
Yeah. He's like, hey, you still need us for your petrodollar. If you fuck us, we can always go with China. That's our option, because it's pretty big if Saudi Arabia actually start to trade oil in yuan, because China is one of the biggest importer of the Gulf oil from Saudi Arabia and from UAE. And the whole basis of petrodollar was a 1970s deal Kissinger worked out with Saudi Arabia to price oil in dollars. So that means anybody in the world who need to purchase Saudi oil,
Has to use
they have to
dollars.
have dollars. So that made dollar valuable. And then when the major oil producer Saudi win, when all the oil producers eventually, when all OPEC price oil in dollars, everybody just follows suit, because you need oil, right? You need
Yep.
oil to run your economy, and that made dollar the world's reserve currency. Now, if Saudi Arabia, one of the major cornerstone of the original petrodollar policy,
Mm-hmm.
is gonna switch to yuan, that's gonna be big. So I still have to wait to see it actually
Yeah.
happen. Otherwise, there is a possibility that Saudi is just using as a hardball negotiation tactics to signal to U.S. is like, hey, you gotta to tone it down, criticizing of us, in your
Mm-hmm.
media. Otherwise, we're gonna go with the China.
I think you're actually right. I mean, I think that they're not going to do it, but the fact that they gotta put a little fear into the United States, like,
Yes.
hey, we can. And to the audience, if this happened, if this actually did go this direction, since the United States left off the gold standard, we're no longer backed by gold currency.
Yep.
We no longer have manufacturing in the U.S. The only thing that props up the American economy. So for those people who like to go into, I can't think of what it's called. They start thinking about, oh, well, we don't have to worry about it. We can spend whatever and balance it out through the inflation and deflation. I can't remember what it's called right now, But I'm like,
that's the monetary policy. But
yes. MMT,
monetary policy. But
yes.
that's only if people willing to take U.S. dollars. I mean, like the only reason we can print money, print money is because people accept
because of the petrodollar.
Yeah, as a foreign exchange.
The petrodollar dies, America is done. Period.
Yeah. I mean, that's
done.
one of the main pillars of U.S. hegemony is U.S. military, its financial hegemony, right, and tech. This is three things that's holding up the U.S. hegemony right now. And petrodollar dies, everything goes.
And the thing about it, which a lot of people don't realize, is our weapons companies in a heartbeat could just be like, all right, fine, we'll just relocate everything to Mexico, Canada,
yes.
or move to UK or France.
Yeah,
and since
they're not loyal Americans, they're not loyal patriots. They're loyal to the dollar. They're loyal to the money. If the dollar goes, they're not even going to loyal to the dollar. They're just going to loyal to whatever currency is next to hard currency.
If China opened their doors and said, hey, we'll take some of your weapons and we'll start buying weapons from you, I wonder, I would not doubt that you would easily see 25% of American companies flood to China tomorrow.
I mean, look at what happened at collapse of the Soviet Union. Look at what after collapse of the Soviet Union, China actually gained a lot of technology transfer because a lot of the scientists that got to eat. China offered them jobs by moving to China and shares the know-how, and so China actually digested a lot of the Soviet technology. They made a lot of technological leap in terms of military hardware from inheriting a lot of the Soviet both talent and also hardware. So your scenario is totally plausible. When the U.S. empire collapsed, you bet your bottom dollar they're gonna go to.
They are gone. Exactly.